Excuse me, sir. Could I wait on your porch until the county plow gets through? I won't be any trouble. How long have you been out there? A while. My car slid off the county road. Are you hurt? I don't think so. You walked here from the road? Just over a mile. In this ice storm? I saw the light in your workshop. Your porch is really all I need. Have you eaten? Not since this morning. But please, I don't want to be a bother. Come inside. I've got soup. Oh, no, I couldn't. I saw your little girl asleep by the table. I shouldn't walk into a stranger's workshop with his child right there. Dad? I'm right here, Grace. That lady's shivering. I know. Can I get Mom's blue blanket? Yes. Go grab it. Sir, honestly, I can wait outside. No, ma'am. You can't. Come inside. That was Marcus Bennett. A widowed single father with less than $200 to his name, 2 mortgage payments behind, and his 7-year-old daughter asleep 10 feet away. The town was already circling his workshop, the only thing keeping food on their table. A contractor still owed him over $1,000. What was left in his fridge was supposed to last through the weekend. And now he'd just pulled a total stranger in off the ice when he could barely hold his own family together. Grace came back clutching a faded blue blanket her mother had sewn before she passed. The older woman took it in both hands. Thank you, she said quietly. Marcus pulled a chair up beside the space heater and warmed a packet of soup on the little burner by his workbench. Nothing fancy. But she cradled that cup like it was the finest thing anyone had ever given her. Her name was Margaret. Marcus didn't ask for a last name. A woman her age had just trekked over a mile after her car went into a ditch, her coat soaked through, her lips losing color. What he needed to know was whether she could breathe fine and whether she'd struck her head. Everything else could wait. While he rang the county's non-emergency line, Margaret's eyes drifted to the plan spread beneath his drafting lamp. Cedarview Landing, a Whitfield Meridian development. Her grip on the cup tightened. Marcus noticed. He didn't say a word. The dispatcher told him both roads into Hollow Creek were shut down. Tow trucks were hours out. No one could safely reach the house that night. He was told to keep her warm and watch for confusion, drowsiness, or if the shivering stopped. So Margaret stayed. 6 weeks later, when her daughter, one of the wealthiest women in the region, discovered exactly whose door her mother had landed on, would she shield the project threatening to bulldoze Marcus's home or stand with the father who'd taken her mother in? By morning, the ice had turned Hollow Creek to glass. Marcus was up before 5, checking on Margaret twice through the night. She was alert, but her hands still trembled and a dark bruise had bloomed across her shoulder. Once the county road reopened, he drove her to an urgent care clinic 20 minutes out, Grace riding along in the truck while Margaret checked herself in. Marcus never caught a glimpse of the ID she handed the receptionist. With her permission, a nurse later filled him in: mild hypothermia, dehydration, bruising from the accident. Nothing broken, no serious head trauma. She just needed rest, fluids, and someone close by for the next day. Marcus paid closer attention to all of it than Margaret did herself. That's who he'd become since losing Sarah. He double-checked food labels. He tested smoke detectors before the batteries died. He kept emergency numbers taped inside the pantry door and a flashlight in every room. A little over a year earlier, he'd been the guy other families counted on to catch danger before it turned into tragedy. These days, most mornings, he was just trying to get his daughter's hair braided straight. That side's lower, Grace told him the morning after the storm. I know. You said that yesterday, and I fixed it yesterday. You put a hat on it. Still counts. Grace grinned into her cereal. Sarah used to braid it without even looking, pack a lunch, take a call from a contractor, and remind Marcus about a dentist appointment, all at once. She'd worked as an electrical forewoman for Ridgeline Structural Services. Marcus had spent 17 years as a construction estimator and safety documentation specialist, combing through quantities, access plans, and the paperwork contractors liked to treat as a formality. 3 days before Sarah died, Marcus reviewed the temporary stairs on a Ridgeline distribution center job outside Dayton. The number on the plan didn't match the steel actually holding it up. He filed a warning through the company's internal system. The system logged it. Someone opened it. Someone marked it resolved. No repair report. No second inspection. No engineer's signature. The next morning, during a crew changeover, the stair assembly gave way. Sarah was on it. Ridgeline's final report claimed she'd entered a restricted zone before clearance. The insurer leaned on that to fight most of the family's claim. The company sent flowers. The official record kept the blame on her. Marcus never set foot on a job site again. He turned the workshop behind the house into a small estimating business so he could raise Grace on his own, reviewing plans, prepping permit packages, checking budgets for contractors who needed an experienced eye but couldn't afford a big consulting firm. Some months it covered everything. That winter, it didn't. A contractor still owed him over $1,000 and had gone dark. The mortgage was 2 months behind. Then Cedarview came knocking, offering to buy the house. The city called it voluntary acquisition. The offer arrived in a glossy envelope stamped with the Cedarview Landing name, a $460 million project promising luxury units, retail, a hotel, hundreds of jobs on the old mill site. The public presentation showed a service road curving around Maple Street. The contractor drawings showed something else entirely, a road cutting straight through 11 homes. Marcus's workshop sat right in its path. He couldn't relocate the business without losing clients. He couldn't replace the property for what the city was offering. And more than anything, that house held almost every ordinary memory Grace had left of her mother. Sarah's pencil marks still climbed the kitchen doorway, one birthday at a time. The cedar chest in the workshop still held that blue blanket. The house wasn't worth $400 million. To Marcus, it was worth everything. Margaret meant to leave the day after urgent care. The repair shop had other plans, her rental needed a new front axle assembly, and the storm had delayed the part. Hollow Creek's only hotel had lost heat too, after ice took down a line. Marcus offered her the small room above the workshop for one more night. She tried to pay him. He wouldn't take it. She bought groceries instead. Grace started calling her Miss Margaret, then shortened it to Miss Maggie without asking anyone's permission. At first, Marcus didn't leave the two of them alone together. That wasn't unkindness, that was just being a parent. Margaret respected it. She helped Grace with fractions while Marcus worked 10 feet away. She fixed the torn strap on Grace's backpack, washed every dish she used, and folded Sarah's blue blanket each morning before tucking it back into the cedar chest. One evening, Marcus found her studying a framed photo in the hallway. Sarah in a hard hat and orange vest, one arm around Marcus, the other holding a much younger Grace. She looked strong, Margaret said. She was. What happened? Marcus looked at the photo. A warning got ignored. Margaret could tell the answer cost him something. She didn't push for more. The roads cleared after 4 days. The hotel got its heat back. Margaret could have left town. Instead, she rented a small furnished room above a pharmacy 2 blocks over. She still showed up at the Bennett house most afternoons, partly because Grace expected her, partly because she'd grown curious about the Cedarview paperwork scattered across Marcus's table, and partly because, after years of reaching her own daughter through assistance and unanswered texts, she'd found a home where people set an extra plate at the table without asking what she could give back. Marcus noticed Margaret understood more than she let on. She recognized outdated drainage standards. She knew why developers sometimes kept public drawings separate from contractor revisions. She could read a redevelopment agreement and hear exactly what it was dodging. But she never took the work over. The discovery stayed Marcus's. A small excavation company had sent him a contractor drawing and asked him to price out drainage work. It carried the same permit number as the plan shown to Maple Street residents, but they weren't the same plan. The public version routed heavy trucks around the north edge of the old mill lot. The contractor version ran them through 11 homes. The public version called for a smaller drainage system. The contractor version needed nearly double the capacity. Then Marcus checked the soil report. The engineer had certified ground conditions 3 days before the samples were supposedly even collected. One plan could reassure a neighborhood. The other could make the project profitable. They couldn't both be true. 2 weeks after the storm, Hollow Creek held its first public hearing on Cedarview Landing. Councilman Harold Weston sat at the center of the table, 52, silver-haired, careful with every word, rarely visibly angry. Harold didn't threaten anyone. He just explained things until resistance started to sound unreasonable. He talked about revitalization, tax growth, responsible transition. He called displacing families property consolidation. He called lowball offers early participation opportunities. When Marcus's name was called, Harold glanced at his notes. He knew Marcus had turned down the city's offer. He saw a widower in a patched brown jacket working alone out of a shed behind his house. He did not see the man who'd spent 17 years catching mistakes before the concrete ever got poured. Marcus set the public plan under the chamber camera. Then he laid the contractor version beside it. Which one did the city actually approve? Harold kept smiling. Technical documents get revised as projects develop. Marcus pointed to Maple Street. One plan keeps the road north of these houses. The other wipes out all 11. The project's purpose never changed. The land it's taking did. A murmur rippled through the room. Marcus walked them through the drainage numbers and the dates on the soil report, kept it simple. One plan shown to the public, a different one sent to contractors, signatures that didn't match the work. The city engineer requested both documents. After 12 minutes of whispered back and forth, the council pushed the vote back 45 days. It wasn't a win. It was time. Outside, residents crowded around Marcus, some wanting reassurance, others wanting to know if the city could still force a sale. Marcus didn't promise what he couldn't guarantee. All we proved, he said, is that somebody has to explain these plans. Now we find out if they will. Margaret was waiting at the bottom of the steps. You stalled a $400 million vote with 2 sheets of paper. I delayed it. Those families just got 45 more days. He looked back at the crowded building. That matters. By Monday morning, the pushback came. A city inspector showed up at Marcus's workshop with a clipboard and a printed complaint. His home business permit was suspended. The inspector flagged an electrical panel that had passed inspection 3 years earlier, and cited a new occupancy classification and accessibility rules normally reserved for businesses with walk-in customers. Marcus had no walk-in customers. The fine came to over $3,000. The required upgrades were estimated near $30,000. He could appeal. But the appeal could take 3 months, and until then he couldn't legally run the business out of the workshop. 2 clients dropped their contracts within 48 hours after receiving messages claiming Marcus's business was under investigation. By the end of the week, his account balance had dropped under $100. That Friday, Grace came downstairs holding a white envelope covered in purple stars, her savings for a school trip to the Springfield Science Museum. I don't have to go, she said. Marcus sealed the envelope shut and handed it back. That's not your bill to pay. But you need money. He crouched down in front of her. I need you to be 7. Grace looked at the envelope. Your job is school, cartoons, and complaining about my cooking. Your grilled cheese is burned. See? You're doing excellent work. She smiled. Margaret watched from the kitchen doorway. The next morning, Marcus found a suitcase by the front door. Margaret had packed up the few things she kept at the house. You're leaving town? I think I should. Why? Harold Weston didn't know I was involved until after the hearing. Marcus looked at her. You think the inspection happened because of you? I think my questions made someone nervous. He shut down your business because I pushed him, and I might be giving him another reason to. Marcus carried the suitcase back into the living room. Your room over the pharmacy is still paid for. That's not the point. I know. He set the suitcase down. Don't let Harold decide when you leave. Grace appeared in the hallway. Are you still coming Sunday? Margaret looked at her. Yes. Then, quieter, to Marcus, I'm still coming Sunday. Margaret almost told him the truth that morning. She didn't. It was the first real mistake she made with him. She had her reasons, but none of them made the silence fair. For 3 years, Margaret had accused Ridgeline's contractors of burying safety problems, without ever finding enough proof to force action. Her daughter Vanessa had called her concerns incomplete, emotional. Company lawyers warned that unsupported accusations could expose Margaret to a lawsuit and end any chance of repairing things with her daughter. She was afraid that if she told Marcus who she really was too soon, he'd assume Whitfield Meridian had sent her to keep tabs on him. She was also afraid Vanessa would find out where she was, shut down the quiet investigation, and seize the records before Margaret even knew what they proved. So she waited for the contractor files, then confirmation, then one more document. Every day she put it off made the truth harder to say. 3.5 weeks after the storm, Margaret walked into Marcus's kitchen with her leather bag. The workshop was still shut down, so Marcus had moved his work to the kitchen table. An old laptop wedged between Grace's crayons and a stack of overdue bills. Margaret set a worn business card in front of him. Margaret Whitfield, founding engineer, Whitfield Meridian Development. Marcus read it twice. You founded the company with my husband. And Vanessa Whitfield is your daughter. Yes. Vanessa Whitfield was 44, chief executive of Whitfield Meridian Development, and one of the wealthiest women in the region. Business press described her as disciplined, efficient, nearly impossible to rattle. Marcus looked at Margaret. How long were you going to wait? I kept telling myself I needed proof first. You sat in my house while her company was trying to take it. I know. You watched me lose my permit. I know. And you still said nothing. Margaret lowered her eyes. I was afraid you'd think I'd been sent here. Were you? No. Then you should have told me. She didn't defend herself. You're right. Marcus slid the card back toward her. For the first time since the storm, he didn't ask her to stay for dinner. Margaret opened her bag. I came to Hollow Creek because a retired construction inspector reached out to me. That doesn't fix what you hid. No. But it explains why I came. She pulled out a thick envelope. The inspector had spent years tracking unresolved safety complaints tied to Ridgeline Structural Services. He'd died of heart failure before Margaret could reach him. His daughter handed over what papers remained. The file showed a pattern of safety warnings marked resolved without proof, inspection dates altered after the fact, supervisors rewarded for avoiding delays. Ridgeline was now the lead structural contractor on Cedar View Landing. Margaret had left Whitfield Meridian's board 3 years earlier after Vanessa refused to suspend Ridgeline over evidence the company's lawyers deemed incomplete. Margaret believed the pattern was real. Vanessa believed her mother was asking the company to act before anything could be verified. Mother and daughter had stopped listening to each other long before they stopped speaking. The storm was an accident, Margaret said. Meeting you was an accident. Staying silent was my choice. Marcus said nothing. I'm sorry, she went on. You deserved to hear it from me sooner. That apology didn't undo his anger, but it let the conversation keep going. Marcus unlocked the cabinet holding Sarah's files and pulled up the original warning email from the week she died. Margaret recognized the tracking code. Ridgeline's archive showed the warning had entered the system Monday morning. It was opened twice. At 2:36 Tuesday afternoon, someone marked it resolved. Sarah died Wednesday. No repair document. No photo. No inspection. No second calculation. For over a year, Marcus had wondered if his warning simply got lost in a crowded system. Now the record showed something worse. They saw it, he said. Margaret looked at the screen. Yes. And somebody closed it. Marcus sat very still. He'd pictured finding proof like this 100 times, expecting it to bring relief or fury. Instead, it brought silence. Sarah had gone to work believing that when someone flagged danger, the people above her would act. Someone had acted. They just changed a word on a screen. Margaret asked to use Marcus's phone. This time, she called her daughter. Vanessa picked up on the second ring. Margaret told her to come to Hollow Creek and bring the company's compliance director. Vanessa asked if her mother was hurt. Margaret said the physical danger had passed, the other kind hadn't. When she gave Marcus's name, Vanessa went quiet. Sarah Bennett's disputed claim had crossed Whitfield Meridian's legal department once, back when Ridgeline requested contractual protection from any lawsuit. Vanessa had seen the surname. She'd never seen the family. "I'll come," she said. Vanessa arrived 4 days later, stepping out of a black SUV in a charcoal coat, alongside Renee Coleman, Whitfield Meridian's director of compliance. No camera crew, no PR team. She walked into the Bennett kitchen braced to pull her mother away from a stranger who might have figured out who she was and seen an opportunity. Instead, she found Margaret in Sarah's old green cardigan. Grace working through fractions beside her. The city's closure notice lying next to a box of crayons. Marcus cutting the crust off his daughter's sandwich while Renee opened the first contractor file. Grace looked up. "Are you Miss Maggie's daughter?" Vanessa said she was. She was really cold that night. Grace went back to her worksheet. There was no accusation in it, which somehow made it land harder. Vanessa asked if Marcus had gone to reporters or demanded money. He'd done neither. He laid the 2 Cedarview plans, Sarah's warning, and the permit suspension out on the table. "I'm not asking you to pay me." "Then what are you asking?" "Reopen Sarah's case. Give the workshop a real inspection. Stop Cedarview until the public sees the real plan." Vanessa explained she could pull Whitfield Meridian out of the project, but she couldn't overturn a city order or officially pin Sarah's death on Ridgeline. Marcus already knew that. He wasn't asking her to be a judge. He was asking her to use the authority she actually had. Renee began preserving the company's records that same afternoon. The first pass confirmed the tracking code and closure time, and identified the employee login used to close Marcus's warning. It belonged to Owen Reyes, Ridgeline's regional operations director, who now oversaw Cedarview Landing. But the case wasn't airtight yet. Vanessa wanted to handle the investigation privately. She proposed suspending Ridgeline, reopening Sarah's claim, and negotiating with Hollow Creek before making any public accusation. "We can stop the damage without announcing findings we haven't finished verifying," she said. Marcus looked at her. "You want to keep this inside the company?" "I want to verify it." "And the families losing their homes?" "They'll be protected while we review the records." Marcus glanced at the closure notice by Grace's crayons. They were told that before the inspection even started. Vanessa stiffened. "You think I came here to bury this?" "I think you still want control of the story." Vanessa didn't answer. For once, Margaret didn't step between them. The investigation ran 9 more days. Renee filed a preservation hold. Outside counsel pulled archived email logs. A forensic accountant combed through the project's public engagement payments. Marcus cross-checked inspection dates against property records and acquisition refusals. It wasn't an instant confession, some emails were missing, a few invoices looked clean until accountants asked for the work behind them, and one Ridgeline supervisor insisted the contractor plan was never meant for actual construction. Then Marcus found a truck-turning calculation buried in a private bid package. It used the disputed route through Maple Street. The company hadn't just sketched a second road, it had priced the entire project around it. the evidence built piece by piece. 11 homes sat along that route. All 11 owners had turned down purchase offers. All 11 properties were inspected within 6 weeks. No other neighborhood in Hollow Creek saw anything close to that level of enforcement. Then the accountant turned up a $170,000 trail of community consulting payments to Weston Civic Partners, a company owned by Harold Weston's brother-in-law. Invoices existed. Reports, needing records, or any completed work did not. Vanessa still hesitated to release the findings before the outside review wrapped. Then Harold made his move. As the 6th week began, Hollow Creek posted a temporary closure order on Marcus's workshop, citing a potential electrical hazard on a panel that hadn't changed since the last inspection. A local website ran a photo of Margaret walking into Marcus's house and accused him of manipulating a billionaire's elderly mother. His address ran right under the article. Grace stayed home from school after strangers started driving slowly past the property. Vanessa offered private security and a hotel suite. Marcus took the security. He turned down the hotel. "I'm not moving Grace because somebody printed a lie." That afternoon, Harold called Vanessa's office. His recorded message was careful. "Once the compliance pressure makes continued operation impractical, Mr. Bennett may become more receptive to the acquisition offer. I believe the situation can still be managed if Whitfield Meridian maintains its commitment." On its own, it sounded bureaucratic. Next to the targeted inspections, the closure order, and the payments to his relative, the meaning was unmistakable. Harold had expected the pressure to work. Vanessa sat at Marcus's kitchen table while Grace colored a house with 4 people standing in front of it. For years, Vanessa had told herself she couldn't personally read every report or oversee every contractor. That part was true. What she hadn't admitted was that Whitfield Meridian rewarded people for avoiding delays and treated warnings as obstacles. She'd built a system where silence paid off. "I thought scale meant trusting the people under me," she said. "You have to trust them," Marcus replied. "Then what should I have done?" "Make sure telling you the truth doesn't cost them anything." Vanessa looked toward Sarah's photo. "It's not that simple." "No. How do you know it would have changed anything?" Marcus looked out at the closed workshop through the kitchen window. "Because silence is how Sarah died." That night, Vanessa told Whitfield Meridian's board the company would pull out of the current Cedarview agreement, suspend Ridgeline, and cooperate with the city's ethics investigation. Her attorneys warned a public statement could expose the company to lawsuits. Vanessa understood that. She also understood that fixing everything quietly would only preserve the same imbalance that had let the harm happen in the first place. Marcus had taken the truth into a public room because no one with power had listened to it in private. 6 weeks to the day after Margaret knocked on the workshop door, Hollow Creek City Hall was packed past capacity. Residents lined the walls. Reporters filled the back row. Harold Weston sat at the center table, composed, confident, expecting Vanessa to protect a $400 million investment. Marcus stepped up to the microphone first. Grace sat beside Margaret in the 3rd row, holding her father's old work glove in both hands. Marcus laid out the 2 plans, walked through the hidden road, showed the soil report certified before the samples ever existed, and laid out the inspections that had zeroed in on exactly the properties the contractor route needed. Then Harold cut in, holding up an invoice. Marcus had been paid $650 by the excavation company that sent him the contractor plan. Harold turned to the crowd. "Mr. Bennett has presented himself as an independent citizen. He was paid by a company seeking work on Cedarview Landing." The room shifted. Council members glanced toward Marcus. A reporter started typing. "He received a private contractor document because he wanted work tied to this project," Harold pressed. His objections only started after that work fell through. For the first time all morning, Harold looked like he'd found his opening. Marcus didn't deny the invoice. "The company paid me to estimate drainage quantities. That's how I got the second plan." "So you had a financial interest?" "I had a $600 job, and you wanted more out of it." "No." Harold leaned back. That's your statement. Marcus slid the original email request under the camera. The excavation company had asked him to price the drawing because it didn't match the public documents. The date was 9 days before he even learned his own property sat on the contractor route. Then he pulled up the estimate itself at the bottom, in his own writing, "Do not rely on quantities until permit drawing conflict is resolved." He'd flagged the problem before he ever spoke at City Hall. Harold pushed anyway. These are private documents, provided by a bidder. The city has never confirmed this route was approved. That's when Vanessa stood. Harold's expression eased slightly. He assumed the wealthiest person in the room would protect the deal. Vanessa walked to the microphone. My company has confirmed that the second route was included in Whitfield Meridian's contractor bid package. The room went silent. It wasn't an unauthorized sketch. Contractors were asked to price it. Harold's momentary edge vanished. Vanessa introduced herself as chief executive of Whitfield Meridian Development. She confirmed her company hadn't ordered the inspections on Marcus's property, then acknowledged the harder truth: our investment created the leverage that made those inspections useful. She announced Whitfield Meridian was withdrawing from the current Cedarview agreement. All Ridgeline contracts were suspended. The company would hand its records over to independent investigators and the appropriate state authorities. Vanessa didn't claim innocence. She said Whitfield Meridian had rewarded speed over protecting the people who reported risk. Renee distributed the payment records tying the project account to Harold's relative. Vanessa played his recorded message for the room. Harold called it a routine discussion of regulatory circumstances. The city's ethics attorney stood and confirmed Harold had failed to disclose his family's financial stake in Weston Civic Partners, and that the inspection requests had originated from communications tied to his development office. The council stripped him of his chairmanship on the development committee and barred him from any further Cedarview decisions. Marcus's fines and closure order were suspended pending an independent inspection. The redevelopment agreement was put on hold. The evidence went to the State Ethics Commission and the county prosecutor. Harold wasn't arrested in the chamber that night. No judge closed the case on the spot. Real justice took longer, but when he walked out of that room, the residents he'd once called obstacles watched him leave without any authority left at all. Outside City Hall, Vanessa found Margaret at the bottom of the steps. For 2 years, mother and daughter had spoken mostly through brief messages, occasional help, and long stretches of silence. Vanessa looked back at the building. I kept telling myself I needed more proof. You have it now, Margaret said. I know. Margaret took her hand. Nothing between them was fully healed, but neither of them let go. Vanessa later found Marcus and apologized for questioning his motives, for wanting to keep the investigation private. He didn't rush to make it easier for her. You don't need me to make this easier for you. I know. What matters is what happens next. Vanessa nodded. I understand. 8 months later, Harold Weston stood before a county judge. Investigators proved he'd used city inspections to pressure homeowners, hidden his family's financial stake, and helped steer project funds toward a company with no documented work to show for it. He pleaded guilty to felony bribery and tampering with public records. The court gave him 20 months in state custody, ordered him to repay the $172,000, and barred him from ever holding public office again. Before sentencing, Harold gave a brief statement. I chose Marcus Bennett because I believed grief had made him easier to pressure. I knew his daughter depended on that workshop. I called it redevelopment because that sounded better than admitting what I was doing. He'd recognized his mistake. That didn't erase the consequence. The independent inspection cleared Marcus's workshop as safe. The city restored his permit and refunded the fine. Sarah's case was reopened after investigators confirmed Ridgeline had closed the original warning with no corrective documentation on file. Her name was cleared from the finding that had blamed her for entering an unsafe area. Marcus later opened Bennett's Safety and Estimating, not a big operation, just 2 employees, 3 desks, and a new sign over the old workshop door. Margaret rented a small house 3 blocks away. She picked Grace up from school twice a week and kept Sarah's blue blanket folded over the back of her sofa. Vanessa started coming to Hollow Creek on Sundays. At first it was for her mother. Then she started staying for dinner. She and Marcus didn't fall for each other quickly, they disagreed too often for that. Vanessa still believed some projects could rebuild struggling towns. Marcus still believed no project deserved trust without accountability. But neither of them walked away when a conversation got uncomfortable. That was new, for both of them. One spring evening, Grace's school put on a music performance. Marcus got there early and sat beside Margaret in the second row. One seat stayed empty on his other side. Margaret noticed. She didn't say anything. The lights dimmed. Kids filed onto the stage. Just before the teacher raised her hands to start, Vanessa slipped in through the back doors, no driver, no assistant, just 2 paper cups of coffee. She stopped beside Marcus. "Is this seat taken?" He looked at the empty chair. "I saved it." Vanessa sat down. On stage, Grace spotted them in the crowd, her eyes moving from Marcus to Margaret to Vanessa. She smiled so wide she missed the first note. After the show, the 4 of them walked out toward the parking lot together. Grace held Margaret's hand and talked the whole way without stopping. Then she looked up at Vanessa. "Are you coming Sunday, too?" Vanessa looked at Marcus. She let him answer. Marcus took one of the coffee cups from her hand. "I'll save you a seat." Vanessa changed Marcus's life the moment she chose the truth over the silence that would have protected her. Do you think he was right to give her that chance? Tell us in the comments. And if you're the kind of person who believes quiet fathers deserve stories where courage, family, and integrity still win out, subscribe to Quiet Fathers Stories. Another father everyone underestimated is waiting in the next one.